Octopath Traveler is an amazing game. Octopath Traveler is also a very special game, and in this video I'm going to be explaining and talking about some of the things I think this game does right, and some of the things this game does really right. Octopath Traveler is a game that released on July 13th, 2018, and quickly became one of the best-selling games on the Switch. Now at first I didn't play this game, but it's always been on my radar as a game that I would have liked to play if given the opportunity. And recently I decided to purchase this game and give it a shot, since I've always been a big fan of turn-based RPGs, and I was certainly not disappointed after playing this game. There are so many different things that make this game special and set it apart from other RPGs, and today I'm going to go over some of those. The most apparent thing to talk about is the diverse and expansive cast of characters this game allows you to play as. You can play as any of 8 characters, and each one has their own 4-chapter story that alone would take many hours to finish. Combine that with the fact that all 8 characters have their own 4-chapter stories, and you get a very hefty game. However, this game exceeds in its character development. Each character has their own drives and ambitions for what they do. Upon meeting Therion at the beginning of his story, he is portrayed as a cunning thief who doesn't really have a drive for what he's doing. Many times in the game, he'll say himself he's just doing what he does to get by. But over time, you learn that in his past, he was betrayed by his only close friend in life and nearly killed. And this creates an interesting dynamic when Therion ends up meeting his old partner again during his travels. And that's just one character. This game has 8, and all of them have just as deep and meaningful stories. And with how many characters there are in this game, chances are great you'll find one that's your favorite. And to add to these characters' great stories, they each have their own diverse landscapes they will travel. This game seriously does a wonderful job portraying the feeling of going on an adventure. There are so many great places to visit across the continent of Orstera, like barren deserts, rocky mountains, scenic beachside cities, massive kingdoms, cold and desolate mountains and plains, and so much more. This game has so many cities alone, not even counting the countryside areas that you could visit. Each city has its own ecosystem and way of life that makes them stand out so much more than your average town in an RPG like Pokemon. Now moving on to debatably one of the most important parts of an RPG, the battle system. And I am proud to say this game does not disappoint. The battle system works similar to games like Pokemon, where you can choose which moves you want to use and the faster opponent moves first. What sets this game apart is the break and battle point mechanics. Each enemy has a certain amount of shield, and only certain weapons or magic attacks will break them. Once broken, normal attacks can inflict massive damage, and this adds a lot to the strategy of the game. Some bosses will get stronger as time goes on, so you might have to go all out and try and break his shield as quickly as possible to avoid him setting up powerful attacks and status ailments. While other bosses are slower and require you to strategize the time that would be best for your team to break his shield. The other battle mechanic is the battle point system. Each round, your character will gain 1 battle point, with your count maxing out at 5. You can spend up to 3 battle points at once, and they will greatly increase your attacking power. They can also increase other things, such as your healing abilities and such. The only downside is that if you use a battle point during a turn, at the very next turn you won't be able to earn a battle point, which adds to the strategy you will need going into battles. And you will definitely need to have a plan thought out before you fight each boss. Some of them will push your team to the limit if given the opportunity. One thing I want to point out, however, is the pretty bad level scaling towards the final boss. The game doesn't do a great job of letting you naturally level up to a high enough level to challenge him, so you will inevitably end up grinding for levels, and if you aren't particularly good with battling and all the intricacies it brings, you'll definitely need to level up a lot to compensate, which is a problem since after beating all 8 characters' stories, there's only really one area you can visit that has decently high enough leveled enemies, and even then it'll only be a while until you eventually outlevel them and won't get nearly as much experience. Which is a problem because even at that point you'll still most likely not be a high enough level to even have a chance at beating the final boss, because he is insanely tough. I get that RPGs usually have pretty difficult final bosses, but this is on a whole other level of difficulty, and I really wish you were given more opportunities to level up naturally in the story. And the final thing I want to touch on is the music in this game. It is amazing. The overworld music has a very ambient feel, kind of like the Minecraft music does, but when it wants to, the music can get really serious. Like in one battle, Ulbrich has finally met up with a man who betrayed him and killed his king, and as soon as you challenge him to a battle, the music doesn't get upbeat like normal battle music, it just plays a really somber tone, and I think this displays more emotion than any conversation ever could. At this point in the game, Ulbrich still doesn't know what he fights for and has traveled far and wide seeing people with their own resolve and purpose, and he finally finds the man who ruined his life, and you can just feel the amount of history between these two with this music playing. And that's about everything I wanted to touch on. I really love this game. It's currently one of my favorite RPGs I've ever played. I highly recommend you try it out. You won't be disappointed.